We have a variety of NHL news and trade rumors to take a look at today. We've already had another trade today about the Senators and Rangers. What else is going on with guys like Timo, Meier, Jonathan Toews, JT Miller is fairly getting interest as well, and the Jackets appear to have a trade in place for Gavrikov, but it's not yet announced. What's going on? Where's everybody going for the trade deadline? We'll discuss that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of things to discuss today. A little bit of news, then we'll get into the latest trade rumors from around the league. The trade activity is really starting to pick up, and the rumor mill is starting to pick up as well. There's once again no waiver activity today, so nothing on that front. A few other news items around when it comes to some injuries and stuff. The Boston Bruins have placed forward Thomas Nosek on long-term injured reserve. I believe that's more than anything for cap purposes. I believe he's been out long enough or close to it already that he can technically return, because with the LTIR, you have to miss a minimum of 10 games or 28 days. So I believe he's right around that time frame. So nothing on that front that's going to really keep him out for an extended time. The Edmonton Oilers were able to recall Devin Shore on an emergency basis. They had to play their previous game short a player before you're allowed to do that, which is basically a way to get around the cap. If once you're short players, they will allow you to call up on an emergency basis. So Shore meets those requirements. He came up today. The Oilers did lose today to the Avalanche. The Avalanche had a big comeback victory, 6-5 comeback in overtime. The Oilers have been losing more than they'd like here as of late. Now, an injury update, which kind of coincides with a trade rumor update. San Jose Sharks forward Timo Meier was announced that he was not going to play and is going to be held out due to an injury concern. It doesn't sound like it's any kind of serious injury by any means. Coach David Quinn said he wasn't sure if he might miss another game or two. So to me, even though they didn't say it, it kind of sounds like what we've heard from other teams today and recently, saying trade-related reasons is really the reason that they're going to be held out of action. So I'm sure Timo Meier is getting a ton of attention on the trade rumor front. We know that they're getting lots of calls, having lots of conversations around the future of him and where he could be traded to. And if he is dealing with any kind of minor nagging kind of injury, it's probably best that he take a little bit of time and get that sorted out to make sure that the teams that are requiring him or trying to don't have any concerns or issues in that regard, so it doesn't hold up any potential trade. So we'll see where that goes. We had seen earlier today that the Ottawa Senators had announced that Tyler Mott would be held out of today's game against the St. Louis Blues due to trade-related reasons. This is the third player now that we've heard that about, with the others being Jacob Chychrun in Arizona and Gavrikov in Columbus. Although the Mott situation did not take long to resolve, trade was announced and completed just a little while later. So Tyler Mott was traded, in case you missed it today, from the Senators to the New York Rangers for Julien Gauthier and a conditional 7th round pick that upgrades to a 6th rounder if the Rangers win at least one round and go to the 2nd round of the 2023 NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. So Mott, obviously a familiar face in the Rangers organization. They acquired him at the last year's deadline as well. He was a good fit there, but they couldn't afford to retain him, so he signed at Ottawa on a short 1-year deal. And they get him, a decent return, a pick, and a player who might become an option for them. And Julien Gauthier is 25 years old now, and he still has some untapped potential, I think. So overall, I like this deal for both sides. Mott likely wasn't going to be a long-term Ottawa Senator, so at least they were able to move him and get a decent return. All the Sens with today's victory over the St. Louis Blues with a big 7-2 win puts them within 5 points of the final wildcard spot, and they have several games in the hand. So there's really, as much as the playoffs are still complicated, maybe a bit unlikely, optimism is starting to grow a bit in Ottawa. They've really had a good run here. They've had points, and I think it's like 8 of their last 9 games or something like that. They've really moved their way up. The standings are pretty well neck and neck with Detroit and Buffalo. We're all closing in on teams like the Islanders and the Penguins. So we'll have to watch the standings closely. It's going to be a very interesting the last few weeks here as we head into March and towards the end of the season. Obviously, there's still lots of runway here. Lots of teams can catch up. Lots of teams can fall out. It just really boils down to it. And I know based on schedules for the next 20-plus games that are remaining, I think the Ottawa Senators have an advantage. Not to say that they have the easiest schedule. They do have some tough matchups in there, but I do think that it's not unreasonable to think that they could go on a decent run and win a good chunk of the remaining games to at least make it interesting. Like we said, the Senators' goal getting into this year was to hopefully make the playoffs, but at the very least be in the meaningful games, to be in the conversation down the stretch in the final couple weeks of the season, so that their season doesn't feel like it's over by Christmas or something like that, like we've seen before. And that's certainly not the case. They're in the mix, and we'll see where this goes. It's going to be a fun and interesting Eastern Conference race, I think, as we get down the stretch here. So a couple notes on the Columbus Blue Jackets. One, there is reports that comes from a good reliable source in Aaron Portsline of The Athletic that the Columbus Blue Jackets have a trade in place for Gavrikov. He's been a left shot defenseman. He's been in the rumor mill for some time. Confirmed that he does not want to re-sign to Columbus, so they were definitely going to trade him. The Bruins were a team that was mentioned numerous times, but they weren't the only ones. We've heard teams like the Oilers, Leafs, a few others. I'm not sure what Toronto's going to do now after making a big deal with the Blues. Not to say that they're necessarily done per se. I think the Leafs can still do another move, but it'll depend. Now, the rumor on this one is that the deal can't be official and announced because it's dependent on another transaction happening first. But what is that transaction is the big question. Now, Elliotte Friedman has made comments recently saying that he feels that the Columbus Blue Jackets might be a sneaky team to watch on Jakob Chychrun. Now, Chychrun, of course, would I think prefer to go to a team that's heading for the playoffs. He's been in Arizona his whole career, under the playoffs with no real anything on the horizon in that regard. To go to another team like Columbus, who's probably looking at a few years of getting back to being competitive and being in contention again, I don't know that he'd be overly thrilled and happy with that. But he doesn't have any trade protection in his contract, and I don't know what the reaction would be. But Columbus reportedly in the mix, so I don't know if it has anything to do with Chychrun or not. But something is going on with another team. A deal appears to be agreed to, and they just can't finalize it. So we'll have to see. Maybe assets are coming in from another deal that they're going to use to flip for this. I'm not sure. It's probably more to do with the other team that's acquiring Gavrikov than the Jackets would be my guess, but it's difficult to say without having more information. There's been some talk from Jeff Merrick and Elliotte Friedman as well, that another Blue Jacket that's getting some attention is goalie Jonas Korpisalo, who's actually not having too bad of a season. The Jackets do appear able and willing to trade him should the right offer come along. Obviously, he's on a fairly inexpensive short-term contract, so there's not much of a long-term commitment at all by teams that could acquire him. We know there's teams that are likely going to be looking for either goaltending depth or upgrade going to the deadline, so I would suspect that he might be a player that gets some attention. I know a team like Seattle comes to mind. I don't know if they really want to go into the playoffs with the goaltending that they have in place. They've had a good season. They've made big strides forward. They've been a lot more fun and exciting to watch, more offensive for sure, but goaltending certainly seems like it's still very much the weak point there, and if they don't figure out a way to improve it, I honestly don't know what their odds are going to be to have any kind of success in the playoffs, but we'll have to remain to be seen on there. But a couple of players and deals in Columbus that we could see here in a very short term. Now, we got a huge update today on Chicago Blackhawks captain Jonathan Toews, long rumored along with his teammate and good friend Patrick Kane to possibly both be traded at this year's deadline, but it looks like that's not going to be the case, at least not for Captain Serious Jonathan Toews. Patrick Kane has been playing extremely well as of late. As I've recorded this video, the Blackhawks are in the middle of a game with the Toronto Maple Leafs currently in the second period. The Hawks were leading 3-1 last time I checked before I hit record here, and Patrick Kane had all three Blackhawk goals. He scored 2 goals in their previous game against the Senators. He's been really lighting it up, and I think he's extra motivated to get some teams' attentions here after getting passed over essentially by the Rangers and by the Leafs going out making other trades. You have to wonder if he feels like he's got something to prove, that he still has a lot to give and could be a really good pickup of the deadline for the playoffs. Now, the Rangers and the Leafs, I don't think the Rangers really have a way to do Patrick Kane, especially after getting Mott again today. But the Leafs, they might be able to figure out getting Kane in. And that's the scary part about this. It would be costly, though. They'd obviously have to pay Chicago. And the only way to get that salary down to the point where it's anywhere close is they would need to do the same thing they did with Ryan O'Reilly and pay a third team to broker the deal and take an extra 25% of the contract. And even then, it would be tricky. It depends on what they're willing to part with. If they're willing to part with a couple of more salaries, like a Kerfoot and a Hall or something like that, then Patrick Kane might be a possibility. But do they really feel like they need a player like Patrick Kane, or do they want to maybe look to add some more readiness on the back end? That might be the more likely scenario we see. So we don't really have any more updates on Kane going to either team, but he seems to be the only one that's going to be traded, because Jonathan Toews put out a statement today in confirming the worst here, that what's kept him out for a period of time since the All-Star break is going to keep him out for a while, and he doesn't feel like he can really play to the expectations for an acquiring team. Basically, what he's dealing with is still the long COVID symptoms. So we know some people have COVID, it goes away and they're done with it, but some people seem to get these long-lasting symptoms that just they can't shake, and it really impacts their energy and how they feel. It's just a different kind of immune response, and it's been plaguing Jonathan Toews. It kept him out an entire season. He's been fighting through it this year, but certainly it's been getting worse again, and certainly feels like he said that it's just been too tough to fight through. He needed a good break. There's still optimism he can get back and play this year, but if he can, it's not, like he said, it just basically can't confirm that he's going to be able to play enough and to the level that the teams that would be acquiring him would be expecting, and that wouldn't be fair. So he's going to ride things out with Chicago. Hard to say if he plays again. Will this impact his career beyond the current season? It very well could. I do think that the future of Jonathan Toews has a big old question mark on it, and we really don't know. But like I said, his buddy and teammate Patrick Kane is lighting it up, getting some attention, and I can probably say he's playing with extra motivation. Dallas and Vegas are a couple of teams that are still rumored to be in the mix, but we don't know what Kane really wants to do. We had heard before the Rangers and Leafs were his preference, but will he consider trades to teams like Dallas or Vegas, who reportedly do also have some interest? The Canucks are also getting calls on JT Miller. Of course, he has a no-trade clause, a part of the new contract extension that he signed, but it doesn't kick in until July 1st. So teams are calling and inquiring what the Canucks want to do and to see if they will entertain this kind of a trade. I mean, there's no, clear-cut answer to say that he's definitely going to be moved, but there is some teams that are interested. I don't know how the Canucks feel about this, but it could be a good move to give him a good return. Miller's had his issues with the team, of course, from an attitude standpoint, you could say. A new head coach, Rick Tocchet, certainly seems to be taking a different approach and trying to change a few things with the culture there. So be interesting to see if they do want to entertain this. To me, a team that comes to mind for JT Miller, if the Canucks want to entertain this, would be the Hurricanes. The Hurricanes are traditionally a team that's not real keen on bringing in rental players at the deadline. They prefer to acquire players with term, to have players who they can keep under team control for an extended time. So that's a possibility. Now, Miller, had a lot of trade rumors surrounding him late last offseason before he was signed. Many felt that he was more likely being traded than signed, and of course they surprised us there on left field. They gave him the contract he wanted and they agreed to an extension. The Islanders and Canucks were reportedly really close to a trade at the deadline, or at the draft, last summer. That never materialized. Of course, since then, the Islanders have acquired Bo Horvat, and I can't see them trying to pull off a JT Miller trade. I can't imagine how that would fit with their system now after acquiring Horvat. But still, like Carolina comes to mind. Be interesting to see what else the Vancouver Canucks decide to do here. So lots more activity. Like I said, we could have a Gavrikov trade pretty much any time. And if they're waiting on another transaction to take place, for that one to take place, you got to think that whether it be today, tomorrow, maybe we'll see another couple of trades here. It makes you wonder how much business is going to be left to be done at the actual deadline. Deadline day itself may not be as busy as we've seen in the past, with a lot of business being taken care of ahead of schedule. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.